So let me start by just talking about what zero trust is. For those of you who aren't familiar with zero trust is a security principle and architecture. First came to light several years back from an analyst, another analyst in the industry who coined the term, but it didn't really gain any traction in the industry until very recently, until we had technologies that really sort of matured and were able to sort of offer capabilities that fit well into this idea, into this security model. So at its core, what zero trust is it's a data-centric security architecture centered on the belief that you should not trust anything or anyone, whether it's inside or outside of your perimeters. So zero trust, you have to verify everything that tries to connect to your resources, whether it's humans or non-humans. So an application, for example. And so your authorization to this connection is based off of the content and overall trustworthiness. So what I mean by that is, do you trust the identity? Is the context there? So, you know, if they're trying to connect, do you understand why they're trying to connect? And then lastly, do they have a history of trustworthiness? And if they do, and you've granted this access, then that's great. But then the last piece to this puzzle is now you want to enforce least privileged access. And so this is key, especially for trying to mitigate around insider threats or mitigate around potentially a compromised device, right? So zero trust is basically don't trust anybody or anything, whether it's outside of your network or inside of your network. And I'm going to just throw out a couple of scenarios for you that I think we should all think about and really think about how this fits in, because I think it fits very well into this type of approach, this type of model. So number one is migrating your business to the cloud. We know over the past several years that the migration of workloads and applications over to the cloud has increased significantly. And so what that means is that you know, the perimeter, the network perimeter, as we call it, it has become incredibly fluid and dynamic, and it's no longer really a static entity because there's been a seismic shift in migrating these workloads over to the cloud. So you know, things like the Internet of Things has gained in popularity as well. Mobile access, as we all know, has gained significantly in popularity, as well as this geo-distributed workforce. And so as such, the adoption of like SaaS applications have really taken hold within our businesses as companies, enterprises are really looking to scale their applications and reduce costs. So now we have files, documents, emails that are out in the cloud today, right? With applications like Office 365. And so our infrastructure now extends to hybrid architectures. It's no longer on-premise architecture. It is a mix, right? A hybrid of on-premise architecture with various cloud platforms like Amazon AWS, for example, or Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud, which we've seen personally just a big spike in interest over the last, I'd say, year or so. And so with this new world, this new modern architecture that we're now seeing, what that ultimately means is that we now have an expanded surface area for attack, right? And so now gaining privileged access in an environment like this now carries significantly more risk, significantly more weight, because when you think about you know, a privileged credential in your expanded hybrid environment. A credential which is essentially the keys to the kingdom. You think about what they can do now in that type of environment, much more risky, much more damaging than in the past. And we all know if you go back over the past, let's say 5 years, and you look at all of those publicized data breaches, inevitably, in almost every single case, it's going to involve a compromised privileged account, right? So it is critical when you're talking about this zero trust framework that you are focusing on and keeping in mind that privileged account and making sure that you are really controlling access and understanding who is requesting that access and what they're trying to do. And once you allow that, to ensure that that's the only thing that they're doing with that account, enforcing that least privilege. Second scenario, and this is as relevant today as it's ever been, as we all know, is this shift to an anywhere, any device type workforce. And if you look at the statistics before COVID-19, 31% of our workforce was what we would say working from home on a regular basis. And now with COVID-19, now that we're in the middle of this pandemic, naturally that percentage has spiked significantly, right? And it's 88%, and that's probably even conservative, but it's 88% of our workforce is now working from home on a regular basis. And so that has a lot of ramifications for how we operate and ensuring that we're operating securely. And so we have to ask the question, when this pandemic is over, what is the new world going to look like? Are we going to go back to what it was before COVID-19? Is it going to be more like 31% of our workforce working from home? Or is it going to be closer to what we're seeing today with 88%? Because I know a lot of companies are realizing that you can still maintain a level of operational efficiency by having all of your employees or most of your employees working from home. That's great, but are we positioned to operate in that fashion securely for the long term? And we hope the answer is yes. But in order to do that, I would argue that you would need something like a zero trust framework or architecture in place within your organization to be able to do this in the long term. So, how does the privileged access management capabilities sort of fit into this zero trust platform or framework? It does in a number of ways. And if you look at it, let's start with the data. And that's ultimately what we're trying to protect, right? Your company's data. And PAM technologies, at the heart of it, we are controlling privileged access to privileged accounts. They can ultimately gain hold of that data. And so the technology itself is managing and controlling all of that access and monitoring all of that access with the ultimate goal of protecting that data. Number two is the people, right? So technologies can enforce multi-factor authentication to make sure that only authorized users can access privileged accounts, making sure that the people that are requesting that access, verifying that they are who they say they are. Number three is devices. We have PAM technologies today that can validate devices that are attempting to use the privileged account. And if it's an unknown device or it's an unusual request, we can prevent that authorized access. So really, truly understanding what it is, who it is that are trying to access this. Number four is the networks. The PAM technologies today protect access to the devices that actually safeguard your network and your perimeter, which is key. If somebody were to gain access to one of those types of devices, you can imagine the type of malicious damage they could perform with that kind of access. Number five is the workloads. I talked a little bit about the migration of cloud workloads or workloads into the cloud. And you think about, how DevOps over the last 4 years or so has really been ingrained in organizations and companies, and being able to automate those DevOps tool chains and those cloud workloads through something like secrets management, for example, right? I mean, PAM Technologies plays very well into DevOps environments and protecting those secrets, locking down those secrets. So it's a perfect technology for that type of environment. And then the last thing I want to say is automation and analytics. I think this is an area in particular that has matured very well over the last few years. The analytics component really in the marketplace today, in this space today, has gotten very mature in that we can understand what we would consider normal user behavior, and more importantly, understand what is unusual or abnormal behavior, and then perform actions off of that, right? So the automation component comes into play here, where you can automatically mitigate against some potential threat that's going on based off of the analytics that you've uncovered. And the analytics component is a core piece of PAM Technologies today. Okay, so just spending a minute to talk about our product set and how this fits very well. So Symantec Privileged Access Management, and for those of you not aware, this was previously CA, Privileged Access Management. We were recently acquired by Broadcom, and then who acquired Symantec. So there's been a little rebranding going on, but the technology is the same, and it is Symantec Privileged Access Management that we have all the capabilities designed to prevent data breaches by protecting privileged credentials, controlling privileged access, monitoring and recording all of that user activity across your hybrid enterprise. It's no longer just an on-prem deployment. It's always a mix of an on-prem and cloud footprint as well, but you have to make sure that you protect the entire hybrid enterprise. And capabilities that we have today around privileged access management are, obviously the credential vaulting, which is critical to any PAM solution, session recording for auditing purposes as well, user behavior and risk analytics, which is, I'd say, one of our key unique areas where we have the ability to proactively mitigate against any medium or high risk activity that we identify. Host-based access control is another unique element of our solution where we can offer very fine, granular level of access control by having an agent software that is deployed on that target system or server itself, so that if an administrator, Bob, for example, is using a privileged account and he's on that server, our software will make sure that he's only performing the activity that he's allowed to do as defined by his role. If he tries to perform something that's outside of his role, that's outside of that least privileged access, we will actually intercept that command and block it from occurring. So that's where that least privileged access concept of the Zero Trust framework really comes into play here. Automated application password management. It's not just humans that are leveraging these types of privileged accounts. It's non-humans as well. Applications, scripts, RPA, robotics, process automation, bot technologies. Lots of different things need access, need privileged accounts, and you want to make sure that all of those things are being managed by a PAM solution. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the hybrid environment, right? This has to be a solution that spans your entire hybrid enterprise, not just a portion of your enterprise. All of this is complemented within our Symantec portfolio by other critical capabilities necessary for the zero trust framework, like EDR, endpoint detection and response, cloud-based technologies like the CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker, Secure Access Cloud, authentication with our VIP product, data loss prevention and protection, and advanced threat protection as well. And it's all driven by a very comprehensive analytical platform, and all integrated with an integrated cyber defense platform as well. So I think the Symantec portfolio plays very well into this type of framework with those capabilities. And so our approach to zero trust security is really to give you all of those capabilities together. It's an integrated approach that allows you to embrace and enforce the new architecture, new security model. So you have users, devices, both managed and unmanaged, trying to connect and gain access. And our capabilities can be used to ensure that the endpoints are secure, used to ensure that the authentication is there, they are who they say they are. We have continuous verification, real-time inspection, and a very comprehensive analytical platform for risk-based adaptive policy. And our PAM solution fits very well at the heart of this model for controlling the privileged access and ensuring the least privileged access is enforced. And so a platform approach overall beats point solutions. And it does so because it has the integrations in place that can ultimately deliver improved security outcomes. It reduces the operational complexity because of this single platform, single set of technology approaches, and provides a better visibility for auditing and compliance altogether with one unified view. And then our Symantec Privileged Access Management value proposition here is that, number one, it's the most efficient solution out there today, giving you the ability to manage and audit your privileged access activity from a single console. It has the most value with a very low total cost of ownership. It's an all-in-one appliance that can be quickly deployed for fast time to value. And it gives you comprehensive layers of PAM protection, offering both coarse and fine-grained controls from a single platform. And so I know we had a short window. I see it looks like my time was up on the screen there. I want to thank you all for attending and listening to me in today's session. I will be around and logged into the KC Live platform. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much for attending today's session.